Thank you. And it's actually Red Dead Redemption 2, the latest one. So today what I wanted to talk to you guys about is really leveling the playing field in terms of getting investment into your CX, into your digital experience initiatives. We heard in the previous two speakers, around reducing the time to market and using data and that sort of thing, which is critically important. But what I find is when you're dealing with the annoying product folk like myself, or you're dealing with executives, there's always an issue of prioritization, or there's something more critical, or there's something that makes more money. So what I'm trying to do today is really present to you some of my key strategies and my ways of leveling the playing field and elevating your CX initiatives with all the other initiatives in the business. Quick thing about myself, Michael. Most people call me Mike. About a decade experience in product management. I've either worked for these brands or consulted to these brands around their product strategy and their digital experience. Afterpay most recently, and Moshtix and Ticketmaster. I did a stint at BCG, forgive me. But most recently, Medibank and NAB as well. So to anyone in this room, none of these objections are going to be very new to you. I did a quick round study with some of my clients, and we found that about 68% of all of the objections that we heard around investing in CX is budget constraints. And I imagine that's just going to be getting more and more as budgets start to shrink and other initiatives and businesses start to get a little bit tighter. But these aren't the only objections. Other objections around uncertainty of impact is a big one, and that's something that I speak to my product teams about, my product managers around. If you can't quantify what the lift is or the incremental lift is, it's going to be very, very hard to make not just a data-led decision, but a very informed decision in terms of why should we be investing in this against something else. You've got competing priorities in there as well, and then just lack of executive buy-in. And what I want to try and aim for you again today is, how do you kind of solve these things, not just with the data that you have, but by also presenting and demonstrating the incremental lift for each of your CX initiatives. I won't go too much into this just because it's pretty well known to everyone here. What are some of the benefits to your improvement in investing in CX? You've got increased customer loyalty. What does that do? That generally increases higher revenue, and it really improves your brand reputation as well, which won't be too much of a surprise to anyone here. But I really want to cover off three things, and these are my three key strategies or approaches in order to level the playing field and get or increase your chances of getting investment into your CS initiatives. The first one really is identifying the relative benefit of the improvement. And when I mean relative, it's very important for it to be relative to your business. If you're a sales-led business or you're a conversion-led business, you need to be able to demonstrate what is the incremental lift in revenue, what is the incremental lift in margin. If you're a subscription, if you're a membership-based business or an association, those sort of metrics don't matter as much. So what is the incremental lift in sign-ups or memberships or subscriptions or read time? I've never worked for a not-for-profit, so I don't know what's important to them, so forgive me. The other important thing as well, which I find is probably one of the biggest things that result in non-investment in CX, is breaking the problem into smaller bite-sized chunks. As product professionals, as CX professionals, we generally look at an overall view, we look at an end-to-end customer experience, say, this is broken from the time the customer comes onto the website all the way through to when they buy and they download the app. That's a big problem to solve. It could also be very overwhelming. It kind of just creates this mentality of it's just this big, hairy, audacious goal, or BHAG, we're never going to get to it. It's too problematic. So really breaking down the problem into smaller bite-sized chunks, more digestible chunks, I think is a very important way of getting that investment. And the last time, which I think the previous speaker mentioned around the value of doing these first two things, is really reducing your time to value. So how do you incrementally improve and iteratively improve your CX and continuously add value to then further demonstrate further investment or to further justify further investment? So firstly, identifying the relative benefits of your improvement. Now, like I mentioned, the most important thing is not just to talk about what the lift will be. So one thing that I've acknowledged in my experience is a lot of time, this product's going to make $1 million, for example. Is that good or bad? You couldn't tell me. Is that incremental or is that cannibalizing? You can't tell me. You haven't really said to me why I should invest in this initiative. And I've had that feedback a lot in my experience. I've had it drummed into me. I've had it bashed into my head. So unless you can show the incremental lift, so, okay, I'm going to make $1 million, that's going to be an incremental of $600,000 because we're going to decommission this product, or we're going to improve the conversion rate by this, and it's not going to reduce the conversion rate of other products. So being able to demonstrate the incremental lift, and this is one of the biggest skills that I think, from my experience, product managers don't get trained in enough in terms of justifying and prioritizing product. A lot of it is around experience. We're going to improve the customer experience. We're going to improve the conversion rate. We're going to get more downloads. But being able to demonstrate the accretive value, or the incremental value, or the incremental lift is more important than just the top line number. And what that does then is it really actually presents a solid case for investment. So if you're asking for 3 months dev time or 6 months dev time, what you're asking the business essentially is, we want to place a bet on this initiative is going to make us more money. And I know I'm kind of diminishing it a little bit by saying you're placing a bet, but that's what product managers generally do, or digital consultants, and everyone in the room here. We're placing bets that we think that if we do A, B is going to be the result. So you really need to build that solid case for investment, going, well, this sounds like a pretty legitimate bet. You've used all the right data. You've shown some incremental lift that we might be able to get. Here's a little bit of investment. An example of that really, showing the accretive value of that is something that I did at Moshtix just recently, around last year. Was we use the Content Square platform to really understand things like, where are customers clicking, where are they signing up from, but more importantly, what we wanted to show and we wanted to demonstrate is a new incremental lift, not just for us, but for our clients, so the venues and the artists and that sort of thing. Is like, at what times are they presenting, and when they do come at certain times of the day, how close to the event is it? Where are they? How are they, managing it? We had all this huge sign-up flow, for example, and we needed all this data. What we found was, an hour before the actual event, customers were walking up to the door, and spoiler alert, we ended up calling it walk-up mode, but the customers were walking up to the door, trying to buy a ticket, and getting really frustrated with the fact that, why do you need my email address? Just give me the ticket right now. Why do you need my phone number? Just give me the ticket right now. Why are you asking me for all these different details, my name, my guest details? It's not really important. When I'm at the door, I could be pretty drunk or whatever it is, at 11 o'clock at night, I just want to see this artist. I want to go see this venue. So using this data, we were able to present to the executives and say, well, if we were to create a really lean version of the checkout flow for this 1 hour before the event, when they're really close and they just want it fast, we stripped out all the data that we didn't need. We didn't need postcode. We didn't need email address. We didn't really need phone number. Most of the times, we don't even need the last name. They just want to buy the ticket. We streamlined the payment processes, so rather than doing things like Zip at the time, or buy now, pay later, and all that sort of thing, we just really stripped it down. Just give us Apple ID, or just give us your Apple or Google Wallet details, credit card details if you wanted to. Make it really quick. And what we were able to show was, not only we didn't really cannibalize any of the existing sales, we incrementally improved the sales, not just for Moshtix, but also for the venue themselves. They were losing a lot of customers. They were doing a lot of cash. What they really needed was, they needed 2 people at the door to process that. They were able to remove 1 person, and they just had 1 person for scanning. So that's a really quick example, and a really, showed the demonstration of how do you use the data, and showing the incremental value of something to be able to get that investment. The other part is really breaking that problem into smaller, manageable chunks. It's very easy for us as professionals to go, well, we need to fix the whole checkout flow. We need to fix the whole, purchase journey. We need to fix the whole onboarding journey. But what that does is it creates a really long cycle. It really creates a really expensive endeavor to fix, and it could almost be very overwhelming for the business executives or the decision makers. So just a couple of ways to sort of break it down into smaller bite-sized chunks is break them down into little CX journeys, or touch points, or micro moments. I think they've been referred to before. Okay, cool. Rather than looking at the whole purchase journey from an e-com platform, from product page to checkout and payment and email, or whatever it may be, let's look at one. Let's use the data that we have. Where are the biggest drop-offs? Where's the biggest impact going to be? Let's focus on those. What this does, it really allows your early wins, and I'll talk through it around, you're reducing your time to value. The quicker you can deliver value to the business, the more likely you are to get further investment, the more likely you are to show the value, the more likely you are to get those quick wins. Similarly, and just as importantly, the more quickly you're able to fail. But it won't be a monumental failure. It's a very small failure, but a failure is still a learning. So you're able to quickly learn fast or fail fast if need be. You want to focus, like I mentioned, on the high impact areas first. Focus on the smaller issues. So if your product page is broken, start there. right? Your payment screen might be, converting at 78%. That's great, but your product page is converting at 28%. That's probably going to be the bigger lift if you fix that. That's where most of the customers are. And really just show that phased CX improvement example. So show to the business, if you were to improve this is how much incremental lift we're going to get. If you're able to show that, this is how much incremental lift we'll be able to get. And what I find is it's a lot easier to sell that into the business because you are competing with other business areas for the same pool of money. You're competing with the same business for a lot of business areas for the same pool of time and resources. And they're very good. I know that the sales team are very good at demonstrating incremental lift. We need to do this. How many times have you guys heard this from the sales team? If we do this one little feature, we're going to get this sale and it's going to be $1 million. That's a really quantifiable benefit. I can, as an executive, I could probably approve that. And if I was to compete against it going, well, if we improve the product page, we'll increase the conversion from 20% to 30%. They're not really apples and apples at this point. Where am I going to invest my time and money? Probably at the former, because I can see that $1 million tag. And forgive me, I'm going to talk about money more because I've worked in financial services and in e-com my whole life, but there are more important things as well for businesses depending on what your business priorities are. A quick example of how I've in the past, broken down a problem into bite-sized chunks. So I did a bit of work with Medibank, and what we did was we really looked at the total onboarding, sales onboarding and automation process. Now that's from customer going into the product page, regardless of source. It could have been an email we sent out, or it could have been a Facebook ad, or it could have been just a direct. And we looked at from that process to comparing the product, to selecting a product, buying a product, getting onboarded, and then actually downloading the app. Now, that whole process might have converted at 0.5%. Now, if I went to the business and say, hey guys, I would like for you to invest in this improvement. It's going to cost us $3 million over 2 years. That's a huge risk. It's a huge gamble without really quantifying what is the incremental benefit of each one. Huge. So we broke it down. Okay, cool. Like I mentioned, let's look at the product page first. What is the conversion rate? Great, we tagged it. We understand what the product page conversion rate is like. We looked at the next page, the compare page. You're comparing multiple or different policies together. That converted terribly. Really confusing to customers. That was probably the worst conversion rate. At the end of that point, they'd go to the checkout flow. That did pretty well. Payment, pretty straightforward. But what we also found was, and this was a surprise to me before I started, it wasn't automated. It would get, your customer would sign up, it would go into a database, there'd be a back-end system, there'd be people there actually taking data source from one platform to another platform. It could take between 2 or 3 days. So it's a very manual process that led to data issues, and we actually had a lot of churn because of it, because as a customer, you would assume that as soon as I signed up and paid, you would be live so I can use the benefits. That did not. So rather than going to the business and saying, well, we need to fix this overall end-to-end process, we took it chunks. Let's fix the conversion page first or the comparison page first. This is the impact. That took us 2 months. We're able to show the incremental lift very, very quickly. What that did is it built trust. It built a little bit of credibility. It built incremental value. It's like, okay, cool, I will invest again into your idea. What do you want to fix next? I think we need to fix the back-end system because we're getting a lot of churn at that point. All right, great. And as part of an overall program, but you're reducing it into smaller bite-sized chunks. And you're reducing the risk. And if we did one little improvement that failed, that's great. It wasn't a big program. There's nothing worse than working on a 3-year program and 18 months later it's just not delivering on the value or haven't delivered any value at all. Those projects, those CX projects, are generally the first to go. You've worked for 18 months, you've just burnt through a ton of cash. We've lost opportunity cost as well because we deprioritize other projects. You're not really delivering the value. So reducing that time to value incrementally and showing the value of each little initiative is far more powerful than doing a whole big project. And then what that does is, like I mentioned, it reduces that time to value. Again, budget cycles, they only go, generally speaking, for most organizations, for 1 year. So getting a multi-year investment is getting harder and harder. So if you can show initiatives that are only going to take 2 or 3 months to be able to show the value and demonstrate the value as part of a broader strategy, that's far more likely to be successful than I need $3 million, and I just use random numbers, for a 3-year project. You're talking about multiple payment cycles. You don't know what's going to happen in 2 years' time. When I was at Moshtix, we had a terrible 2020 and 2021 for obvious reasons. We locked down, no one went to events. 2022 was amazing. 2023 was great. 2024, probably slow. So if I had to ask for investment for 4 years from 2022, guess what initiative is going to get canned first to try and save money? Mine, particularly if I wasn't able to demonstrate and reduce the time to value, that incremental lift. Another really good reason to show that incremental lift is to get that stakeholder buy-in. So I've demonstrated the 3 things, or I've presented the 3 things that are very, very important. Firstly, you want to reduce the incremental value, incremental lift, first thing. Second thing is, break it down into smaller bite-sized chunks, and then reduce your time to value. The 3 key benefits of that is that you do get stakeholder buy-in, and without a large amount of stakeholder buy-in, most projects will fail at that point. A lot of people in product management wrongly believe that the product manager is the CEO of the product. It's probably the worst saying that I've ever heard because it's not true. You need stakeholder buy-in. You need executive support. You need the sales team and the marketing team, and you need the CS team to be able to support your initiative. And the only way they're going to do that is to be able to understand what the incremental value to their business unit is, to understand why that idea, for example, is better than an idea that someone else might have had or an initiative that they wanted. So being able to present that to the stakeholders, being able to demonstrate, here's the lift, here's how we're going to achieve it, here's how we're going to do it really, really quickly, and it's part of the overall, CS initiatives. You're going to be able to keep them informed. One of the best jobs of us digital people and product managers is like keeping the noise down, and you only do that by keeping the business informed, keeping all the critical stakeholders informed. And if you're working on a 3-year project, there's not that much updates. But if you're working on a new initiative and breaking it down and you're reducing that time to value, there's a lot of wins. There's a lot of contact. It's like, hey, look what we did and we improved it. So there's a lot of value in implementing those 3 key things without losing the overall vision or the strategy of that 3-year CX improvement. So for some really 3 key takeaways that I would like for you to take away is, in order to get that incremental lift, data-based decision or data-driven decisions is no surprise to this room. Small manageable chunks is critically important. It makes it, it de-risks it for the organization, it de-risks it for the stakeholders. It allows stakeholders to be able to be bought in and actually champion your product. And by reducing the time to value, you're increasing your chances of getting investment over and over again. And if you stop, and if the investment stops after a year because initiatives change or strategies change, you've still delivered that value initially. So really, in conclusion, what I want you to understand is, CX and from my experience, product management, in order to add the value, in order to be a really solid part of the business, you need to understand the business levers. So not just the data that actually is within the business and the experiences, but what is driving the business. Like I mentioned, in e-commerce, it's probably either going to be top-line turnover, or is it going to be revenue, or it might be margin, whatever it may be. For non-for-profits, it might be something entirely different. But really understanding those key drivers and demonstrating the incremental value for those drivers will help you, won't guarantee you, nothing's guaranteed, but it will help you ensure leveling the playing field with other business initiatives and ensure that you do get investment in your CX. Thank you.